Long before coffee existed and long before the modern world woke on caffeine, there were 3 drinks. They sustained a civilization for over 2,000 years. And one of them reduced insulin needs by 12% in a clinical trial. Yet your doctor has never mentioned it because it grows on a tree God planted in the first garden. Here is the scripture, the science, and how to grow every ingredient yourself. This is Eden's Garden, and if you have not subscribed yet, now is the time. But I am not going to tell you what they are just yet. First, you need to understand what mornings looked like in the ancient world, and why everything we drink today is a shadow of what came before. Walk with me for a moment. Picture a village near the Sea of Galilee. 2,000 years ago, before the sun has risen, the air is still cool. It smells like dust and wild thyme, and smoke from a fire that never fully died overnight. A small stone house sits against a hillside. The floor is packed earth, swept clean with dried branches. A clay lamp flickers against the wall, and somewhere inside, someone is already awake. This is how every morning began in the ancient world, not with an alarm, not with a screen, not with a paper cup from a drive-through window. It began with fire, with water, with something warm placed into your hands before the first light broke. There was no electricity, no refrigeration, no corner store. What you drank in those first quiet minutes was not a luxury. It was survival. It was how the stomach prepared for hours of labor, how a fisherman found his strength before walking to the shore, how a mother steadied herself before the children woke. These drinks were not invented by any one person. They were inherited, passed from mother to daughter and father to son for hundreds of generations. No one wrote them down. No one had to. Everybody knew. Your grandmother may have done something like this. Not coffee. Something simpler. Something she steeped in hot water from her own garden and sipped before anyone else stirred. She never called it medicine. She just knew it worked. And she was right. In the villages of ancient Israel, 3 things were prepared each morning. Something sweet dissolved in warm water. Something herbal torn from a bush growing against the courtyard wall. A bush the Hebrew people called Ezov, their word for the sacred herb, and something leafy pulled from a tree that stood in nearly every yard from Nazareth to Jericho. A tree that has been in Scripture since the very first page. Now let me show you what was in those cups. The first drink was the simplest thing in the world: warm water and raw honey. God Himself spoke of it. In Proverbs chapter 24, verse 13, Scripture tells us to eat honey because it is good. That honey from the comb is sweet on the tongue. In Exodus chapter 3, verse 8, the Promised Land itself is called a land flowing with milk and honey. Honey dissolved in warm water was the most common morning drink in all of ancient Israel. Sweet and nourishing and immediately strengthening. Some people will say honey is just sugar. It is not. Raw honey has a glycemic index between 50 and 60. Table sugar sits at 65. That difference matters more than you might think. The second drink is the one the world has completely forgotten: hyssop tea, brewed from the leaves of a small, hardy bush that grew against every courtyard wall in the land of Israel. Hyssop appears in Scripture at moments of enormous weight. In Exodus chapter 12, verse 22, God told the Israelites to use a bunch of hyssop to paint lamb's blood on their doorposts. That was the night the angel of death passed over Egypt. In Psalm 51, verse 7, David cried out to God and begged to be purged with hyssop so that he might be made clean. And at the cross itself, in John chapter 19, a sponge soaked in vinegar was lifted to the lips of Jesus on a stalk of hyssop. It was the last thing that touched his mouth before he declared his work finished. There is a botanical point worth knowing. Some scholars believe the biblical hyssop was actually Origanum syriacum, a plant known as Syrian oregano or Bible hyssop. Both grew across the same hills. Both were steeped as tea. Both were used for purification and healing since ancient times. The third drink is the one that may surprise you most. Fig leaf tea. Everyone knows the fig fruit. Almost nobody knows the leaves were brewed and sipped every morning. The fig tree is one of the most important trees in all of Scripture. In Genesis chapter 3, verse 7, Adam and Eve sewed fig leaves together for their very first garment. It is the first plant named by species in the entire Bible. In Deuteronomy chapter 8, verse 8, the fig is listed among the blessed trees of the promised land. And in Micah chapter 4, verse 4, the vision of perfect peace is every person sitting beneath their own vine and their own fig leaf tree. The fruit fed the body. But the leaves hold a secret that science is only now beginning to understand. Beside those 3 cups came the morning meal, fish from the Sea of Galilee. Tilapia, known to this day as St. Peter's fish after the account in Matthew chapter 17. Of the 27 species in those waters, tilapia were the most plentiful. They stayed near the surface and were the easiest to catch. And there were sardines, tens of tons hauled in every night during the season. The town of Magdala was the center of the ancient pickling trade. In Luke chapter 24, verse 42, after the resurrection, Jesus himself sat down and ate broiled fish, the morning table made holy. Stay with me, because what science found inside these 3 drinks is extraordinary. In 2022, researchers at the University of Toronto tested the effects of raw honey on the human body. Raw honey reduced fasting blood glucose. It lowered total cholesterol and triglycerides, and it raised the protective cholesterol your body needs most. All from a food that has been on the table since Exodus. When you dissolve raw honey in warm water each morning, 2 things happen at once. The warm water opens your digestive system. The honey coats the stomach, soothes inflammation, and feeds beneficial gut bacteria. A study in the Journal of Agricultural and Food Chemistry confirmed in 2012 that honey increases populations of bifidobacteria and lactobacilli, the exact bacteria your body depends on. Warm water and honey prepare your body for the day in a way no cup of coffee ever could. Now, hyssop. This is where the science becomes remarkable. Researchers in Japan, led by Miyazaki and Matsuura, published their findings in the journal Phytochemistry. Hyssop contains antioxidant compounds that block an enzyme called alpha-glucosidase. Here is what that means in plain language. When you eat bread or rice or any starch, your body breaks it into sugar. Alpha-glucosidase is the enzyme that does the breaking. Hyssop slows that enzyme down. Think of it as a gentle brake on how fast sugar floods your bloodstream. No spike, no crash, no wave of exhaustion 2 hours after breakfast. In laboratory studies published in the Journal of Nutrition, Science, and Vitaminology, animals given hyssop extract before a carbohydrate-rich meal did not experience the blood sugar spike the control group did. This is the part that should stop you. This is the exact same mechanism used by prescription drugs such as acarbose, the class known as alpha-glucosidase inhibitors. Those medications can cost hundreds of dollars a year. Hyssop grows in a pot on your porch for free. And then there is fig leaf tea. In 1998, a research team led by Sarah Clara published a study in Diabetes Research and Clinical Practice. They gave fig leaf tea to patients with insulin-dependent diabetes every morning with breakfast for 1 month. The average insulin dose dropped by 12%. Let me say that again. 12% lower insulin needs from tea brewed from the leaf of a tree that has been in Scripture since Genesis chapter 3. The study was peer-reviewed and published. It has been confirmed independently by the Cleveland Clinic, and nobody told you about it. Now consider the fish. Tilapia was lean and rich in protein. Sardines were dense with omega-3 fatty acids, calcium, and vitamin D. Together, they formed the protein foundation of the morning meal. No factory, no supplement bottle, no plastic wrapper, just a net, a lake, and a fire. Here is the part that should trouble you. You are spending $5 or $6 every morning on coffee. That coffee spikes your cortisol. It crashes your blood sugar by mid-morning. It leaves you reaching for another cup by early afternoon. You are spending over $100 a month on caffeine and sugar dressed up as a routine. They spent nothing. Every ingredient came from the garden, the hive, or the lake. God designed a morning that costs almost nothing, and it outperforms everything on the menu at your local coffee shop. So if these drinks were in every kitchen for thousands of years, why did they disappear? The answer is simple, and it is heartbreaking. For most of human history, what you drank each morning came from what grew near your home, the herbs in your courtyard, the honey from a hive at the edge of the village, the leaves of a tree your mother planted when she was young. Everything was local. Everything was alive. Then the world changed. Coffee was discovered in Ethiopia around the 15th century. By the 1700s, it had reached Europe. By the 1900s, it had replaced nearly every traditional morning drink on Earth. Coffee was fast, it was addictive, it was profitable, and it could be shipped across oceans without spoiling. The food industry learned a simple truth. Fresh things are expensive to sell. Processed things are cheap. Honey was replaced by corn syrup in squeeze bottles. Herbal teas gave way to instant coffee and powdered creamer. The morning went from something your grandmother made from her garden to something a corporation made in a factory. Hyssop became a footnote in a botany textbook. Fig leaf tea vanished from memory entirely. Raw honey was diluted and stripped of its living enzymes. The morning shifted from nourishment to stimulation, from something that healed to something that merely startled you awake. Nobody noticed, because nobody remembered what came before. But here is the thing. These plants were never gone. They were just forgotten. The hyssop bush still grows wild across the hills of the Mediterranean. The fig tree still stands in backyards from California to the Philippines. The honeybee still does the work it has always done. Everything God provided is still here, still growing, still waiting. Close your eyes for a moment. I want to show you what it looked like when these drinks were still part of the morning. A woman rises before the sun. It could be any village in Galilee. The stone house is dark except for the soft glow of embers still breathing in the clay oven. She moves quietly. She does not want to wake the children. She takes a clay cup from the shelf, pours warm water from a vessel that sat near the fire through the night. Then she reaches for a small jar of honey, dark and thick and rich with the scent of wildflowers. She stirs a spoonful into the water and watches it dissolve in slow, golden ribbons. She steps into the courtyard. The sky is barely changing. There is a fig tree against the far wall. Her mother planted it. She reaches up and pulls 3 broad leaves. They are heavy in her hand, cool and rough on the underside. She tears them and drops them into a second cup, pours warm water over them. The steam carries a green, earthy sweetness that smells like the garden after rain. Then she turns to the small bush growing wild against the stone wall. Hyssop, the sacred herb. She pinches a few sprigs and the scent hits her, clean and sharp with something almost like mint. She drops them into a third cup and lets them steep. 3 cups sit on the wooden table. Beside them, a piece of grilled tilapia from the evening before, a small clay dish of pickled sardines, a round of flatbread dense with seeds. This was not a ceremony. This was not special. This was just morning. This was just what life was. And when he came to the table and reached for that first cup, he was drinking what his Father had designed, from plants his Father placed in the soil, in a garden his Father imagined before the world began. Now let me give you something you can take home today. The morning routine is simple. You can begin tomorrow. First thing when you wake, heat a cup of water, not boiling, just warm, the way water feels when it is kind. Stir in 1 tablespoon of raw, unfiltered honey, not the kind in a plastic bear from the grocery store. Real honey, the kind that still smells like flowers and feels thick on the spoon. Find a local beekeeper if you can. This is your Proverbs 24. Drink, the one God said was good. Second, brew hyssop tea. Steep 1 to 2 teaspoons of dried hyssop leaves in hot water for 5 to 8 minutes. It will taste clean and green with a hint of mint. Drink it alongside your breakfast. The blood sugar compounds work best when they meet carbohydrates. Third, if you have a fig tree, pull 2 or 3 fresh leaves. Steep them in hot water for 10 to 15 minutes. If you do not have a tree yet, dried fig leaves work the same way. This is the drink from the Santa Clara study, the one that reduced insulin needs by 12%. Beside these 3 cups, add a tin of sardines, about $2. More omega-3, calcium, and vitamin D than most supplements on the pharmacy shelf. The same fish they salted and ate on the shores of the Sea of Galilee 2,000 years ago. But here is where it becomes something more. You can grow 2 of these 3 ingredients yourself. Hyssop is a perennial herb. Plant it once and it returns year after year. It thrives in zones 4 through 9. Grow it in a pot at least 12 inches wide and 14 inches deep. Use well-drained potting soil with a handful of compost. Plant the seeds a 1/4 inch deep. Water when the top inch of soil feels dry, about every 2 to 3 days. Give it 6 hours of sun. You will see sprouts in 14 to 21 days. Your first harvest comes in about 8 weeks. Once it is established, hyssop will self-seed on its own. 1 plant becomes 5 by next season. You will never buy dried hyssop from a store again. If you live in a tropical climate like the Philippines, the Caribbean, or parts of Africa, true hyssop may struggle in the humidity. Grow Oreganum syriacum instead. Many scholars believe it was the actual biblical hyssop. It thrives in warm, dry conditions and carries similar healing properties. Now the fig tree. Figs grow in zones 6 through 11. They do beautifully in a large container. A 15 to 20 gallon pot is enough. In tropical climates, they grow year-round with almost no care. The tree produces broad, usable leaves by its 2nd year. Harvest them, dry them in a dark room for a week or 2. Store them in glass jars. 1 mature fig tree provides enough leaves for daily tea for your entire household for decades. Your grandchildren will steep from the same tree you plant this week. When you press that seed into the soil, you are doing something older than any law, temple, or nation. In Genesis chapter 2, verse 15, God placed the first human being in a garden with 1 command, to work it and to keep it. That was the original assignment, the very first thing God ever asked of us. Every time you water that hyssop or tend that fig tree, you are answering the same call. You are not just gardening, you are tending Eden. Do not overthink it. It does not need to be perfect. People have been growing these plants for 3,000 years without a single video to help them. We live in a world that wakes up anxious. We reach for caffeine before our feet touch the floor. Our blood sugar rides a wave we cannot seem to steady. And we spend fortunes trying to fix what was never meant to be broken. All along, the answer was in 3 cups, written in the most read book in human history, growing in gardens from Galilee to your grandmother's backyard. A leaf from a fig tree, the same tree that has been in Scripture since the very first page, reduced insulin needs by 12% in a published clinical study. God wrote the prescription. The garden fills it. If this fed your spirit the way it feeds the body, subscribe to Eden's Garden and watch the video appearing on your screen right now so you never miss what Scripture reveals next. The water is warm, the honey is waiting. The garden has been patient long enough. Go plant something.